Beloved friends, life is a mirror reflecting the beliefs we hold deep within our hearts. A losing philosophy is simply a way of thinking that has no foundation in the divine law of life. It is a pattern of fear, doubt, and limitation that we have accepted as truth, yet it is not our truth at all. The first step to reprogramming this philosophy is to recognize it. Notice the words you speak, the thoughts you entertain, and the mental pictures you paint. Are they filled with lack, worry, or despair? Or do they speak of health, prosperity, love, and victory? Every thought is a seed, and it will bear fruit according to its nature. If you plant seeds of fear, weakness, and failure, you cannot expect to harvest joy, strength, or abundance. To change the harvest, you must change the seeds. Begin by affirming the opposite of your old beliefs. Speak aloud, I am a magnet for health, prosperity, and divine guidance. Repetition is not mere habit, it is the method by which the subconscious mind is instructed. Your subconscious accepts whatever you impress upon it, whether for good or for ill. You must understand the power of your words. Words are more than sounds. They are the law made manifest. When you speak of your lack, you are issuing an order to the universe to bring more lack. When you speak of abundance, you are sending out a decree that abundance must manifest. Guard your tongue, for it is the instrument of creation. Every time you utter a negative statement, pause and consciously replace it with a positive, triumphant one. This is the practice of spiritual reprogramming. Visualization is the tool that bridges the conscious desire and the subconscious acceptance. See yourself victorious, happy, healthy, and prosperous. Picture every detail. Feel the sensations of joy, security, and freedom. The subconscious cannot distinguish between a vivid mental picture and reality. It acts upon the reality you create in your imagination. Let your mind dwell upon the successful outcome, and let it become so real that your heart believes it already exists. Fear and worry are the greatest enemies of a winning philosophy. They are thieves that steal the joy of the present and poison the future. Whenever fear rises, immediately recognize it as a signal that you are holding on to a false belief. Replace it with trust. Affirm, I trust He divine flow of life. All things are working together for my highest good. By faith and insistence, you dissolve the losing patterns and allow the higher mind to take control. Another vital practice is forgiveness. A losing philosophy often carries the weight of past hurts, resentments, and mistakes. These are chains that bind the soul to limitation. Release them. Forgive yourself and others. Declare, I am free from all past interference. I walk in the light of divine truth and harmony. The moment you forgive, you open the channels for victory, health, and abundance to flow unhindered. Consistency is key. Just as the earth brings forth its harvest in season, so will your new philosophy bear fruit if nurtured faithfully. Repeat your affirmations, visualize daily, and guard your thought. Even when the old patterns seem insistent, persist in your new way of thinking. Victory belongs to those who refuse to accept defeat, no matter what appearances may suggest. Remember, life does not punish or reward, it simply responds to the vibrations you emit. A losing philosophy attracts experiences of defeat, limitation, and fear. A victorious philosophy attracts opportunities, guidance, and success. Choose to think with courage, speak with authority, and act with faith. The universe is ready to respond to your command when you align your mind, heart, and words with the eternal law of life. You are not a victim of circumstance, you are a conscious creator. Your thoughts are the tools by which your destiny is shaped. To reprogram a losing philosophy, replace doubt with faith, fear with courage, complaint with gratitude, and limitation with divine expectation. Every step you take in this new alignment strengthens the power within you and draws to you the blessings that are your rightful inheritance. Step boldly into this new way of thinking. Let no shadow of fear deter you. Speak your truth, see your victory, and live in the confidence that the divine law is always on your side. Your mind is the fertile soil, your words are the seeds, and your consistent faith is the sunlight that nurtures the growth of your victorious life. By practicing this, you are reprogramming every cell of your being, every habit of your thought, and every action into a pattern of unstoppable success. You have the power to change your philosophy, and with it, your life. All that is required is faith, persistence, and a refusal to return to the old limiting beliefs. Begin now. Speak the words of triumph. See the vision of success. Feel the certainty of victory. Let your entire being embrace the knowledge that life responds faithfully to the mind that is disciplined, directed, and devoted to the highest good. Life is a reflection of the beliefs that dwell in the deepest chambers of the. To begin the work of reprogramming a losing philosophy, one must first cultivate the sharp awareness necessary to see the patterns of thought that have led to limitation, disappointment, and struggle. Many walk through life unaware that their circumstances are not random, but are the direct manifestation of their own inner beliefs. The first step in transforming these patterns is to shine honest light upon them. Notice the words you speak in casual conversation, the silent thoughts that pass through your mind, and the recurring images you hold in your imagination. Are they thoughts of lack or abundance, fear or faith, failure or victory? One must learn to observe without judgment, for self-criticism can entangle the mind in further negativity, whereas observation alone brings clarity. Begin by listening carefully to the language you use. Words are far more than sounds, they are commands to the unseen forces that govern the flow of life. When a person says, "I can't, I never have enough," or "life is against me," they are unconsciously directing the law of life to prove that statement true. Often, the mind repeats these phrases automatically, echoing patterns that have been accepted as fact for years. Awareness involves catching oneself in these moments, acknowledging that these statements are not truth but mere mental habits, and understanding that they can be changed. Notice the habitual complaints and excuses, for each one reveals a belief that has been allowed to take root in the subconscious mind. Pay attention also to the images you carry within. The mind is an image-making machine, and the subconscious acts upon the pictures it receives. When you imagine yourself struggling, failing, or lacking, you are giving instructions to life to manifest more of the same. This is why awareness of inner imagery is as critical as the words we speak. Observe whether your mental pictures are victorious, expansive, and abundant, or whether they are small, are full, and defeated. The mind cannot distinguish between reality and imagination, and thus, the images you hold govern the conditions of your life. To reprogram a losing philosophy, one must first identify these inner images and recognize how they have been shaping outcomes. Beyond words and images, attention must be given to emotions. Fear, anxiety, resentment, and doubt are clear indicators of a losing philosophy. When the heart trembles at the thought of the future, when worry takes hold, or when resentment toward others occupies the mind, these feelings are signposts pointing directly to beliefs that are out of harmony with divine law. Emotional states are the language of the subconscious, and unchecked negative emotions reinforce the patterns of limitation and defeat. Awareness is not merely intellectual. It is a full recognition of the ways in which fear and doubt have been allowed to dominate the heart and mind. The person who becomes aware of these influences takes the first step toward liberation, for knowledge is the precursor to change. Journaling can be an invaluable tool in cultivating this awareness. By writing down thoughts, feelings, and experiences, one gains a clearer picture of recurring patterns. Observe the situations that trigger feelings of inadequacy or lack, and note the words and mental images that accompany these reactions. Patterns that may have been invisible in the rush of daily life become apparent when placed before the conscious eye. As the mind begins to recognize its habitual tendencies, it begins to awaken to the possibility of choosing differently. This act of observation is not passive. It is the foundation upon which transformation is built. It is also essential to recognize the subtle ways in which a losing philosophy manifests in daily actions. Habits, routines, and decisions often follow thought patterns before the conscious mind even registers them. Consider the choices you make regarding health, finances, relationships, and personal growth. Are they inspired by confidence and faith, or are they limited by doubt and fear? Awareness involves seeing how beliefs dictate behavior, often in ways that seem automatic or unavoidable. By bringing conscious attention to these habitual responses, one gains the power to interrupt them and replace them with choices, aligned with success, abundance, and joy. Many are unaware that old beliefs are carried silently from childhood, from family, culture, and past experiences. These inherited or absorbed ideas act like invisible scripts, directing life with subtle but persistent authority. Awareness requires looking deeply at these inherited philosophies and questioning their validity. Just because a belief has been held for decades does not make it true. Examine the assumptio NS about money, success, relationships, and personal worth that you may have accepted without thought. Ask yourself, is this belief serving me, or is it limiting me? The very act of questioning begins to loosen the grip of a losing philosophy. Fear is often the loudest voice in a losing philosophy, but it is not the only one. Pride, stubbornness, or attachment to old ways of thinking can quiet. Why maintain limitation, even when the mind intellectually desires change? Awareness involves observing all aspects of the self, including those hidden influences that resist transformation. Often, it is easier to notice dramatic failures than the subtle patterns of thought that precede them. Yet it is in the small, unnoticed moments, the habitual complaint, the fleeting doubt, the whisper of envy, that the losing philosophy exerts its most persistent influence. Developing awareness also requires patience and gentleness. The process of observing one's own mind without blame creates a space in which new possibilities can emerge. A harsh or judgmental approach only strengthens the old patterns by reinforcing a sense of inadequacy. Instead, adopt the attitude of a curious and compassionate observer. Seeing yourself as a work in progress, capable of divine alignment and inner transformation. Recognition of a losing philosophy is an act of love toward the self, for it opens the door to conscious choice and liberation from limitation. The awakened mind begins to see that circumstances themselves are never permanent. They are fluid reflections of the inner beliefs held consistently over time. When you become aware of a losing pattern, you understand that it is not fate or misfortune that governs your life, but a repetition of thought and habit. Awareness empowers you to break the cycle, for the moment you see the influence clearly, you have the ability to step outside of it and consciously redirect the mind toward victorious outcomes. Each recognition is a step away from limitation, and a step toward mastery over your own life. Finally, awareness is the first act of creation. It is the conscious acknowledgement that you have been planting seeds unconsciously, and that you now have the choice to plant seeds of your own design. By bringing the hidden patterns into the light of consciousness, you gain the ability to replace them with thoughts, words, and images aligned with health, prosperity, love, and success. The power lies not in punishment or resistance, but in recognition, for the mind that is aware has the freedom to choose, the clarity to see, and the authority to command its own destinies. You have become aware of the patterns that have been working against you. The next step in reprogramming a losing philosophy is the conscious replacement of these limiting beliefs with thoughts that are victorious, expansive, and in alignment with the divine law of life. The mind is like fertile soil, and it will bring forth whatever is sown within it. If it has been filled with doubts, fears, and images of limitation, it will continue to produce the fruits of struggle, worry, and defeat. But when you deliberately plant seeds of faith, abundance, and joy, the mind responds with miraculous precision, for the law of life cannot fail to act upon the vibration that is impressed upon it. The spoken word is the primary tool in this transformation. Every statement you make carries creative power, whether you are conscious of it or not. To replace a losing belief, one must begin by choosing words that affirm victory, health, and abundance. Begin each day with deliberate affirmations that declare the truth of your being. Say, I am a being of limitless potential. I attract opportunities that bless and uplift me. I am in perfect harmony with the flow of life. Repetition of these affirmations is not mere mechanical exercise. It is the deliberate training of the subconscious mind to accept a new reality, a reality that is consistent with success and divine favor. The subconscious mind does not judge or reason. It accepts what is impressed upon it and brings it into manifestation. This is why consistent verbal affirmation, coupled with feeling, is so powerful. When you declare a statement, allow yourself to feel its truth as though it were already accomplished. Emotions act as accelerators of thought, propelling the mental picture into the realm of AC. Tool experience. When you combine clear, positive language with the feeling of certainty, the subconscious takes the command and begins to coordinate circumstances to match the new belief. Visualization is the companion of affirmations in the reprogramming process. The mind thrives on images, and it responds instantly to the pictures you hold in imagination. Take time each day to see yourself live, ing the victorious life you desire. Picture every detail of your success, your health, your relationships, and your prosperity. Feel the sensations, hear the sounds, and breathe the atmosphere of this reality as though it were already present. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between imagination and experience. It moves to make the imagined real. When this practice is repeated consistent, your inner world aligns with the new beliefs, and circumstances begin to shift accordingly. Replacement of losing beliefs also involves conscious thought selection throughout the day. Observe your mental conversations and redirect them toward constructive, uplifting ideas. When a thought of fear, doubt, or limitation arises, acknowledge it without judgment and immediately replace it with a victorious thought. If worry about finances surfaces, consciously affirm, I am financially guided and secure. Money flows to me in perfect ways. If fear of failure threatens to dominate, declare, I am capable, confident, and divinely supported in every endeavor. Each act of conscious replacement strengthens the new pattern, gradually diminishing the old beliefs that no longer serve you. Gratitude. D is a powerful tool in this process of replacement. When the mind dwells on what is already good, it creates a foundation for further blessings. A losing philosophy often focuses on what is missing or what has failed, but by intentionally recognizing the gifts, successes, and opportunities already present, you reinforce the belief that life is abundant and supportive. Daily practices of gratitude. E, spoken aloud or written in a journal, impress upon the subconscious a pattern of positivity and expectation, replacing the seeds of limitation with those of fulfillment and joy. Another essential aspect of this replacement process is the conscious cultivation of faith. Faith is not merely a passive hope, but a dynamic, confident expectation of the best in all circumstances. It is the refusal to allow outer appearances, setbacks, or the opinions of others to sway the inner conviction of truth. When a losing belief says, I cannot succeed, faith responds, the divine law is working for me, and I am guided into all that is for my highest good. Faith is strengthened by repetition of victorious affirmations, by visualization of desired outcomes, and by the persistent refusal to entertain fear, doubt, or complaint. Forgiveness and release are integral to the replacement of limiting beliefs. Old resentments, regrets, or self-recrimination reinforce losing patterns, anchoring the mind in the past. By forgiving oneself and others, you release the energies that have kept the old beliefs alive. Say aloud, I release all past interference. I am free from all limitation, and feel the liberation as the subconscious absorbs the truth of your statement. The mind, freed from the weight of old grievances, becomes fertile for the new beliefs that affirm strength, abundance, and divine alignment. Consistency and persistence are crucial in the process of replacement. Old habits of thought, cultivated over years, cannot be dissolved in a single moment. Daily attention, deliberate affirmation, conscious visualizatio, and emotional reinforcement are necessary to establish the new patterns. Even when old beliefs seem to assert themselves, continue to practice the new mental habits with confidence and patience. Every repetition strengthens the subconscious impression, and the new philosophy begins to dominate the old, eventually replacing it entirely with a victorious mindset. It is also important to surround oneself with supportive influences that reinforce the new beliefs. Ideas, images, and conversations encountered in daily life can either support or undermine the reprogramming process. Choose books, teachings, and companions that uplift, inspire, and strengthen faith in the possibilities of life. Avoid dwelling on stories of defeat, misfortune, or limitation, for these will resonate with the old beliefs and feed the losing philosophy. Instead, consciously immerse yourself in the thoughts and words that reflect the victorious life you are determined to create. One must also recognize the subtle power of imagination in the replacement process. Not only does it serve for visualizing success, but it also provides the capacity to mentally rehearse responses to challenges, ensuring that the mind reacts in alignment with the new beliefs rather than old fears. When a situation arises that previously would have triggered anxiety, see yourself responding with calm, confidence, and wisdom. Let your imagination create the blueprint for victorious action, which the subconscious mind will then execute effortlessly. The law of substitution is central to this process. A thought cannot occupy 2 spaces at once. To remove a limiting belief, you must fill the space it occupied with a positive, empowering thought. This requires vigilance and a willingness to intervene whenever the old thought arises. With practice, the new beliefs become the dominant current of the mind, automatically guiding speech, actions, and feelings toward outcomes that are harmonious with success, health, and abundance. Replacement of a losing philosophy is not a superficial act. It is the deliberate alignment of mind, heart, and spirit with the eternal principles of life. Every word spoken, every image held, every feeling nurtured in faith acts as a building block in the creation of a new reality. The process requires patience, dedication, and unwavering focus, yet it is simple in principle. What is impress upon the subconscious mind is brought into manifestation. Therefore, by choosing words of power, images of triumph, and feelings of certainty, one can reprogram the mind and live in accordance with a victorious philosophy after awareness of losing patterns and the deliberate replacement with victorious beliefs. The next and final step in reprogramming a losing philosophy is the cultivation of forgiveness and consistency. These 3 principles form the foundation upon which a permanent transformation is built, for without them, the mind will revert to old patterns despite recognition or positive affirmations. Faith is the lifeblood of the new philosophy. Forgiveness clears the pathway of past interference, and consistency trains the subconscious to accept and sustain the new way of thinking. Together, they create a harmonious rhythm that aligns the individual with the law of life and ensures that victory becomes a natural expression of the soul. Faith begins with the understanding that life is governed by an invisible law that responds precisely to the thoughts and beliefs held within the mind. Fear and doubt are merely signals that the individual is resisting this law or doubting its power. True faith is not dependent upon visible evidence or external circumstances. It is the inner certainty that what is right and good is already at work for the highest good of all concerned. When a person develops unwavering faith, the mind is no longer tossed by the waves of worry or disappointment. Instead, it remains anchored in the knowledge that divine guidance is always present, directing the course of life toward favorable outcomes. Faith strengthens every thought, word, and action, giving them the authority to bring the desired results into manifestation. The power of faith is magnified when coupled with affirmation and visualization. It is one thing to repeat words of victory. It is another to believe them with unshakable conviction. When you say, "I am guided, protected, and abundantly provided for," let it resonate through your entire being. Feel the certainty as though it were already real. Let the mind dwell upon the assurance that every circumstance is unfolding perfectly according to divine law. Faith, therefore, is not passive hope, but active trust and expectation. It is the engine that drives the law into action, transforming thought into reality. Why with unerring precision? Forgiveness is the companion of faith, because the mind cannot fully embrace the new without releasing the old. Past resentments, regrets, or perceived injustices anchor the consciousness in limitation and reinforce the patterns of a losing philosophy. When the heart clings to old grievances, it diverts energy and attention away from the present and the future. Forgiving. SS is a conscious act of liberation, allowing the mind to operate free from interference. It is not condoning error or weakness, but declaring freedom from the bondage of past impressions. When you forgive yourself and others, you are cleansing the inner field and creating space for victorious thoughts to take root. The law of life responds instantly to this clearing, bringing relief, opportunity, and harmony where once there was resistance. To practice forgiveness effectively, it is helpful to make clear statements aloud or in writing. I release all past wrongs. I am free from all interference. I walk in the light of truth and abundance. Let the words penetrate deeply into the subconscious and accompany them with the feeling of liberation, knowing that no past condition can affect the power of the present moment. This act is a declaration of authority over the mind and life, reinforcing the new philosophy while dissolving the old. The energy freed by forgiveness allows faith to flourish and empowers the individual to move forward with renewed clarity and strength. Consistency is the third pillar of this process and the element that ensures permanence. A new philosophy cannot take root in a single act of awareness, a fleeting affirmation, or an occasional visualization. It requires daily, deliberate practice until the subconscious accepts it as truth. Consistency is the repeated act of aligning thought, word, and feeling with the victorious beliefs you are cultivating. Each day presents opportunities to strengthen the new patterns. When fear replace it with faith. When resentment surfaces, release it through forgiveness. When doubt threatens, affirm the certainty of the divine law. Through consistent practice, the mind gradually becomes a harmonious instrument tuned to the frequency of success, abundance, and joy. The human mind is like a muscle that grows stronger through use. In the same way, consistency trains the subconscious to act in alignment with the conscious intention. Old habits of thought may attempt to resurface, but persistent attention and practice fortify the new philosophy. It is in the repetition of affirmations, the daily visualization of desired outcomes, the conscious replacement of fear with faith, and the steady practice of forgiveness that the new way of thinking becomes automatic. The subconscious no longer entertains doubt, worry, or complaint because it has been thoroughly impressed with the victorious pattern. Faith, forgiveness, and consistency also reinforce one another. Faith encourages forgiveness because the confident expectation of good makes the release of past grievances natural. Forgiveness strengthens faith by removing obstacles that could interfere with trust in the law. Consistency ensures that both faith and forgiveness are not occasional practices but integrated into the very rhythm of life. Together, these three principles create a self-reinforcing cycle. The more you practice them, the stronger they become, and the more permanent the transformation of your philosophy. Life, when approached with this triumphant mindset, responds faithfully. Opportunities appear. Where none were seen before, guidance becomes clear, and challenges are transformed into stepping stones rather than obstacles. The mind aligned with faith, cleared by forgiveness, and trained through consistent practice no longer attracts limitation. It operates in harmony with the universal law, which is impartial, precise, and infinitely abundant. The individual discovers that victory is not a distant goal but a natural expression of their own mental alignment. In practical terms, this process can be applied to every aspect of life. Health, finances, relationships, personal growth, and creative endeavors all respond to the state of the mind. A person practicing faith, forgiveness, and consistency sees health restored, finances multiplied, relationships harmonized, and personal talents manifested in ways previously unseen. Even when outer circumstances appear contrary, the inner alignment ensures that events work together for the highest good, often in ways that are miraculous, timely, and unexpected. Each step of faith, each act of forgiveness, each consistent practice lays a foundation for outcomes that surpass expectation. One must also recognize that challenges are opportune. It is for the deepening of faith, the exercise of forgiveness, and the reinforcement of consistency. When difficulties arise, they are signals that the mind must be engaged, strengthened, and aligned more fully with the law of life. Fear or resentment can be transformed into conscious affirmation and deliberate choice. the person who maintains faith in the face of adversity, who forgives past reference, and who persists in consistent practice, discovers that what once seemed an obstacle becomes the very instrument of growth, expansion, and eventual triumph. The cultivation of these qualities, faith, forgiveness, and consistency, creates a state of inner authority. The individual becomes the master of thoughts, emotions, and circumstances. The mind no longer wanders into old fears or limiting patterns because it has been impressed with the certainty of the new philosophy. Life ceases to be a series of reactive events and becomes instead a field in which deliberate creation takes place. By faithfully practicing these principles, the individual reprograms every aspect of consciousness, replacing defeat with victory, limitation with abundance, and uncertainty with unshakable confidence.